Hello, I'm James Bacon, and if you've got a couple of minutes, I'd like to tell you about my book, which came out this year, March 2016. It's called EU In or Out, the 60-minute plain-speaking guide to the EU Referendum. Early last year, I came to realise that this whole EU question was going to be a generational game changer for all of us. So I started researching the subject for myself and my family. My PhD is in information management, and for a long time I've been researching the subject on the issues about how to get and give value in information. Coming from this perspective, I found that we had a serious problem with the whole EU in-out issue. And it's this. On the one hand, we have a huge decision that we have to make. As I said, it's going to be a generational game changer, whichever way we go. On the other hand, the level and the quality of information that we've been getting has not been good. In fact, it's been pretty awful. And in fact, it's been confusing. So it's not surprising that a lot of us are still wondering which way we should vote. That's why my researching turned into a book. And that brings me to the purpose of the book, which is this. It's very simple. The purpose of the book is useful information for simplifying the EU decision. How does this book help us? Help you in simplifying the EU decision? Well, let me go through. There's 5 reasons. Let me see what they are. First of all, the book gives both sides of the EU debate, both sides of the argument. Secondly, it's quick and easy to read, and you'll see how in a minute, which you'll see how and why. Thirdly, it gives the facts. That is to say, I've made the information as reliable as I possibly could. Fourth, it stays relevant to the kind of things that we care about. And lastly, it's interesting and it's entertaining. At least I've had feedback to that effect anyway. Okay, let me support the statement that it gives both sides. First of all, what I'd like to show you is the main arguments on both sides. First of all, the arguments for remaining in the European Union. And I'm not going to go into any detail, just the headlines. First of all, peace, understanding and security is what we would enjoy, so it's said, if we remain in the European Union. Second of all, the EU single market. That's a big one. Third, workers' rights and the environment. Fourth, being good Europeans. And last, avoiding a leap into the dark and the unknown. Okay, so what are the arguments for leaving the EU? First of all, it's the loss of freedom and control of borders as long as we're in the EU. Secondly, EU bureaucracy. Third, the EU isn't working. Fourth, the question of practical economics. And lastly, EU reform not going to happen. Now, coming back to making it easy to read and entertaining, there's 3 characters that help us to do this. And these are the 3 characters on the front of the book: Ken, Mary, and Colin. Let me introduce Ken to you. There he is, Ken, who is EU in favour of remaining in the European Union. And then there's Colin. He's in favour of moving out of the European Union. And then there's Mary the moderator. Now, the main part of the book is a discussion between these 3 people. And so, in the process of the discussion, you get both sides of the argument. You've got Ken, and then you've got Colin, who are giving both sides in their discussion. And then you've got Mary, who keeps them on track, stops them from misbehaving themselves, and she also is very good explaining things. So that's her purpose, Mary the moderator. Right, what do they talk about? What do they discuss? This is their agenda. First of all, the history and background. Second, the nature of the EU. And thirdly, how the EU works. Now, I've heard a number of people say, I just don't understand the EU. Right. When you have seen Ken and Colin and Mary discussing these three things, history and background, the nature of the EU, and how the EU works, you will understand the EU. You will understand the European Union. What do they go on to next? Right, jobs. There's been a lot of talk about jobs. And Mary, Ken and Colin consider it from three perspectives. First of all, the EU single market. Secondly, from the perspective of foreign direct investment. And thirdly, from the perspective of being represented by the EU Trade Commissioner in making free trade agreements around the world. They also discuss immigration and open borders, the cost of living, the city and financial services, and small business. Now, that's covering quite a bit of ground, but in the book we cover it fairly quickly because it's a conversation between these three people. The next section of the book is the reforms. What really happened at that EU summit back in February? I think it was around the 20th of February. What did Monsieur François Hollande say? What did Angela Merkel say? And it's important to make note of what they did say, because part of the secret to understanding the EU is that Germany and France are the leading players. Essentially, they run the EU, and the leading player is Germany. So, what did they say? And the book gives you a list of what actually happened so that you can decide, did the Prime Minister get the reforms he was seeking or not? It's up to you to decide. The next section after that invites you to get involved. The question is, are we better off in or out of the European Union? It's a basic question. That's really the bottom line. That's what it all comes down to. Are we better off in or out? You decide. How does the book do this? Okay. It clarifies the benefits on both sides of the argument. And it invites you to give your own weighting, your own score for each of them. As a result, when you've done that, when you've gone through all of the benefits, and there's about 22 on each side, when you've done that, you can then come up with a total score, and that gives you a preliminary decision on which way you might wish to vote. So, that is the crux of the book. There's more to it. Part 2 is additional reading. Part 2 also gives my own view on the issue after having spent a year intensively studying this. But that's it. And then there's 3 questions which are answered at the back of the book, which everybody asks. And if you want to find out what those questions are, read the book. Thank you.